Hi, fifth graders. Welcome to week 3 of distance learning. I can't believe we're already in the third week of this. This is your Monday video for week 3, so the first video of the week. So, of course, we'll go over some announcements and we'll kind of look into some content, and then I'll tell you about your one homework assignment for this week. Yes, you do only have one science homework assignment. It is a little bit bigger, though, so I'm expecting some higher quality work. Hope everyone is doing well and they're happy and healthy, and just know that I do miss you all. Very much. Wish I was back in school with you guys. So, all right. Anyways, let's get to the content and reminders. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. There we are. So again, this is week 3, April 13th through April 17th. We're still in our unit about ecosystems. Today's focus, though, is going to be, and this week's focus really is all about kind of human impact and how we make a difference in ecosystems. So first, some updates and reminders. Please make sure that when you turn in classwork, you turn it into the Google Classroom page. So you need to either fill out the attached document to that homework assignment right there on Google Classroom, or if you do it on a different site, or if you do it on paper pencil and you want to upload it, again, you can click add, and then whatever if it's a picture, your picture, or if you made your Google Slides, doing it that way really improves organization. If you just simply share it with me, I'm going to comment on there and saying, hey, turn this in on Classroom. Otherwise, it's a big mess and it probably will slip through the cracks. This is kind of like using the turn-in tower at school versus putting it on my desk. Don't put work on my desk. Don't just share it with me because it'll get lost in the clutter. So please make sure to turn it in Google Classroom under the assignment. Please make sure you are also doing those attendance forms every single day. Yes, we are taking attendance, and a lot of people have been kind of missing the boat on some of those. Yes, you do need to check in with all of your teachers every day, so make sure you pop in, take that attendance really quick, so that way we know you're working on some school stuff. Please make sure to ask questions when you have them. For last week's Food Web assignment, I have started to send back a lot of them saying, hey, you're missing a lot of labels, or you're missing the arrows, or some really pretty basic things that were in the directions. So please make sure if you don't understand the directions that you ask questions. So you can either do that by popping into office hours, by looking at the Google Doc and typing in your question there, or just creating a flip grid for your question. I usually respond pretty quickly, so please make sure that you check for the responses then. But please make sure, it's really important for you guys to actually read the directions, especially in this distance learning format. So please make sure you do that. Lastly, and this really goes with this week's homework assignment for science, is to do high quality work. With this type of learning, we are not giving as many assignments. This means, though, that the quality of your work should be very high. Again, we're not trying to overwhelm you and have you do a million little things, but maybe one or two bigger things that have a higher quality to them. So please make sure that you are continuing to create high quality work like you would in our classroom. So please don't rush through things. We give you a week for these things for a reason. All right, let's get into content. So this week, for your reading, you read a bit about how humans make an impact on the environment. Initially, a lot of your minds probably think oh no, that's not very good, right? But there are some things that we do that actually do help the environment. So one of the things that your book starts to touch on is hunting and fishing. Now, hunting and fishing can harm the environment when it is not done correctly. This is why we have organizations like the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources that helps put regulations in place. And what these regulations do is they tell you how many fish you can keep. They tell you how many deer you can hunt each year. And so they put these kind of restrictions or limitations on the number of animals that you can take. This way, it makes sure to keep a nice, healthy population. Deer, for instance, are very overpopulated in Minnesota, and especially in a lot of regions. And so depending on where you are in the state, you might be able to hunt different, have a different limit, and have different number of deer that you can kill for during that hunting season. And it's all based upon how many deer are in the area. And so these experts are able to do some science and to figure out what would be a healthy population. And so they are able to put some regulations in place. And this is all part of a greater kind of umbrella term of conservation. Now, conservation is an attempt to protect the environment from any kind of harmful changes. So we are able to interact in a healthy way with the environment around us and with our ecosystems and maintain healthy populations as long as we follow these regulations. The point of conservation is to kind of keep things natural, kind of keep them as they were before humans came around and changed everything. And so there are organizations like the Conservation Corps that help kind of restore the ecosystems to their natural habitats. I will say some of these hunting and fishing groups are some of the biggest advocates for healthy ecosystems. So most of these, for instance, all the money that you spend on your fishing licenses or hunting licenses, they actually go back into protecting the environment. So these groups actually do a lot of help, and they're really great to have in the state of Minnesota. However, pollution is not a good thing. Humans have introduced lots of pollution, especially since that Industrial Revolution. A pollution is any substance that damages the environment, and humans add pollution to the environment in a couple of different ways. One of the ways is water pollution, and this is a really big deal in Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes. This is when there is a contamination of lakes, rivers, groundwater, and oceans. This happens when pollutants, or meaning things that cause pollution, are dumped directly into the water. So believe it or not, back in the day, they used to have factories right along the rivers and right along lakes, so that way they could dump all of their waste and all of their kind of toxic byproduct directly into the water. There were not any rules or regulations about how to get rid of trash and all those kinds of things. So sometimes they were just directly dumped into the water. Since then, we've come around and made some new laws and regulations in place to make that illegal so we can keep some healthy populations in our water. However, this can also happen when things are indirectly dumped into those water systems. So let's say, it's springtime, you take your bike out and you want to paint it red. And so you have your bike on your driveway and you paint it red and it looks great. Now you probably spilled some paint along the way. So you probably took a hose and then you kind of washed that paint down and it would go into the sewer system. And you're like, great, my driveway's good, I'm good to go. However, that sewer system leads to other bodies of water. And so this is an example of that indirect pollution. And so you are not directly dumping your paint into waterways, but it goes from the ground to the sewer system back into the bodies of water. This can also affect the drinking water quality, which is a huge issue as well. Another type of pollution is air pollution, and this happens when gases, dust, particles, and smells enter the atmosphere in a way that hurts the environment. Now, our atmosphere, our blanket of air, is what we breathe. It is essentially a mix of gases. And so these different particles right now are at a pretty decent balance, and so that we can breathe it in and we can live in this environment. However, when companies and when big organizations and even individuals add extra particles into the air, this can change that balance and it can cause some harm. And so one of the bigger problems with this is all of the car exhaust. And so every time we drive our car, we are adding exhaust from our car into the atmosphere. And this changes that balance and makes it unhealthy and can cause a lot of harm. Luckily in Minnesota, we don't have too many issues with this, but there is a lot of smog around those bigger cities around, for instance, California, or even like in China, they have a really big air pollution problem. And so we need to make sure that we keep, like we talked about in ecosystems balance, our atmosphere also needs to be in balance as well, so we can have a healthy ecosystem. Some of the causes of air pollution are emissions, meaning what factories and industries kind of release. This primarily comes from the burning of fossil fuels. So things like cars, trucks, trains, even your lawnmower might cause some air pollution. Chemicals from houses and farms, like when you are heating your house or using cleaning supplies or pesticides, all of these can change the air quality as well. Can also add pollution to the air. Now, your big topic for this week is about invasive species. And this is also in your reading as well for this week. But invasive species they cause harm in an environment where it is not originally from. So this is also known as a non-native species. So when something is originally from that area, we usually call it a native species. Now, usually, well, I shouldn't say usually, sometimes it's not a big deal when something moves to a new area. However, sometimes invasive species can cause a ton of harm. And the reason why is because they can grow and reproduce like crazy. Since they are in this new environment, they don't have any natural predators. So nothing is naturally going to hunt or eat it or limit that from growing out of control. They usually also have a lot of offspring, meaning babies. And so what happens is when we introduce this new invasive species into an ecosystem, it totally makes it go off balance. A lot of times these organisms can use all of the nutrients that are in that ecosystem and completely take over and kind of squeeze out all of those native species. Now, this has to do with humans because usually we are the source of how things get moved around. Sometimes they are brought in on purpose. So back in the 1800s, they would bring over plants from Europe saying, oh, this one's really pretty. I want to have this in my yard as a hedge. It looks great. So I'm going to bring it from Europe and plant it in my front yard. So sometimes they were brought on purpose. Sometimes they were brought on accident. So here I have two little cartoons here. The first one on the left is kind of a grumpy looking fish, and it says invasive species, and all the other native fish are quite concerned because he is going to be more of a predator and eat all of their food supply and kind of squish them out. And then the other one on the right shows little UFOs, and the little bunnies are just saying, oh, I just know this is going to mess with the ecosystem. So I know invasive is kind of a harsh word for it, but sometimes they do a lot of damage, so it is deserved. Now, one example of this is the zebra mussel, and some of you may have seen these before. Now, zebra mussels are starting to spread quite wildly in Minnesota. And what these are is they are pretty tiny little mussels, and they have stripes on them, and that's why they call them zebra mussels, is because they have those pretty distinctive stripes. Now they are originally from Eastern Europe and Russia, and they are just fine over there. They're not a problem. They're not a nuisance. They, don't grow crazy out of control. But what happened was it actually came over by accident in a cargo ship. And so when they shipped something from Russia over through the Great Lakes, actually, they accidentally brought in these zebra mussels. Now, they were released into the Great Lakes water and they started to multiply. And what they do is they completely cover any hard surfaces or on the ground in the lakes, and they can be really sharp. They can even cause bleeding. A true story is that I was at my friend's cabin, and their lake is infested with zebra mussels to the point where you can't even walk on the bottom. You have to wear shoes. And so I jumped into the lake one time and I just wasn't thinking because I'm not used to this. And I actually cut my knee on a zebra mussel and I still have a scar from it to this day. So it's not a pleasant thing. And not only are they unpleasant for recreational purposes, but they're not good for the ecosystem as well. They can actually filter feed so much that they leave no nutrients for the other animals that filter feed. And so what these guys do is they kind of sneak out of their hard shell a little bit, and they kind of sway in the water and they gobble up nutrients as they come by in the water column. But they're so good at this that they don't leave any nutrients for other animals that eat that same way. They also have a ton of offspring, like millions and millions of eggs each year. And they also don't have any predators, meaning nothing eats these guys. And so this results in tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of these guys. So here we have a shopping cart that was pulled from, I can't remember which lake, pulled from one of the lakes around here. and it is just completely encased in zebra mussels. And so if you have been to a lake or a river that has these zebra mussels in them, they are not pleasant to have in your lake, and they can cause a lot of harm over the years. So your lake might start to change and might start to look a bit different. So that's just one example of an invasive species. Now for this week, your assignment is to create a most unwanted poster. So what you will do is you'll pick an invasive species to focus your project on, and this has to be a Minnesota invasive species. Then you are going to create a most unwanted poster. Now you can do this on a piece of paper or two pieces of paper taped together, or if you're enjoying doing things on the computer, you can do it on a Google Doc or Google Slides. Any option is fine with me. The directions are posted on Google Classroom. So when you click on the classwork tab and click under Invasive Species Wanted Poster, you will see the directions on there. I will also show you them here on the video and kind of walk you through them a little bit. But really what I'm looking for is quality work. If you're doing a hand sketch, do some nice artwork, good handwriting. Not only this, but it should be in your own words. It's very obvious when students copy paste from websites. I know how fifth graders speak, and oftentimes when we find language that you don't know the definition of, you probably shouldn't be typing it in your paper. So make sure it's in fifth grade language. Now, this again is going to be on Google Classroom. It's going to be due Sunday night. Make sure it's work you're proud of. This is your only assignment for this week, so make sure it's a high quality one. Now, these wanted posters were for back in the olden days in the Westerns. What they usually had was they had, the crime on there, what he did, a picture of him, a reward, this is what he did, this is where he might be. Same thing here, reward for this much money for Billy the Kid, this is what they're accused of, those kinds of things. So this is also a nice way for you to be creative and to kind of show your creative side as you're making your posters. Now, here are the directions for your task. You are going to create a wanted poster about an invasive or non-native species in Minnesota. Make sure to include all the information on a piece of paper, or like I said, you can tape two pieces of paper together to make a larger poster size, Google Docs, or Google Slides. Then you have a checklist of what you need to include. You need a wanted title, the name of the invasive species, a nickname if it has one, a picture and description in words. What does it look like? How would you identify it? Then for the crime, be specific to what damage your species does to an ecosystem. Why is it harmful? Why is it not good? The hometown, where is it from originally? Suspected hideouts means where is it spread to now? Where is it a problem? The reign of terror might be hard to find. If you can't find it, I wouldn't stress out too much about that. It's when and how did it get introduced? Now your reward is for, are there any prevention methods? Is there any way we try and stop this, or any other interesting facts? Again, please write neatly, be proud of your work. I do have some sites listed here, but do not copy paste directly from the websites. Obviously, I know these websites fairly well. It's very clear when you copy paste from them. Now, if you want to do something that lives on land, there's invasive terrestrial animals. That means animals that live on land that are invasive. Invasive terrestrial plants, meaning plants that are invasive that live on land, and then aquatic animals and aquatic plants. So you can click those links and it will take you to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources website. And from there, you can pick which one you want to do. So there's lots of different ones for each of them. So definitely worth checking out. Now, I did put two examples here. This is what some students did last year. They had to draw theirs on a poster. So you can see they had the unwanted title, they had a reward. They said, escaped from prison in Northern Europe and Asia. They swam all the way over to America and were first spotted here. Now they've entered the Great Lakes and this is what they do. And then they even put a little top hat to make them look more criminal, I suppose. So I thought that was pretty cute. Most unwanted, the bloody red shrimp, which is another one. What you can do, what it looks like. Do not do this. This is where they're from. This is their scientific name. So those are just some clever examples I saw there. So again, this is on the Google Classroom page for you to look at. Now, when we are doing these invasive species posters, I expect there to be questions. This is not something you've done before, so please, please, please make sure you ask me some questions. You can ask on the Flipgrid, you can ask on the Google Doc, you can pop into office hours. You can say, is this what you're looking for? So far, I'm confused by this bullet point. I don't know what that means. So please be specific in your questions, not just, I'm good at. Yeah, okay, did you read the directions? That's number one. Okay, now what part of the directions don't you get? So please make sure that you are using your 5th grade skills that you have so far and problem solving skills. So good luck. Please let me know when you have questions. Like I said, I expect there to be some. So I look forward to seeing your creative, wonderful work. I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye.